I'm aemok.
Madam Hexe.
And Kaitlyn, kayce.
And this is Trouble Comes in 3. This podcast discusses scandalous topics like communication and sexual health, along with kink, leather, and ethical non-monogamy. If you're under 18, please leave us and check out scarletteen.com. For those over 18, welcome and let's get naughty. So, besides how wonderfully punny I am, what are we talking about, ladies?
Terminology.
This was actually a requested topic
Yay.
from my mother.
Which is great for multiple different reasons.
It's good to have involved family.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Well, she knows what we're doing, the podcast, and she was apparently watching something on TV somewhere and thought of us.
Okay.
So she's quasi-aware of your lifestyle choices and is the
Oh, my
question-
mother is overwhelmingly aware of my lifestyle choices.
You know, that's good to know. Not everybody is open or is able to be open with their family in a positive way.
Yeah.
Yes. I do live very unapologetically.
That's fair.
And so a couple of years ago, by a couple, probably like 6 or 7,
There's a couple.
I started leaving little hints. Like my mom knew I was poly. My mom knew that I was kind of in a kink. The educator portion of me.
Right.
She also knows that like I teach and things like that. She definitely outed me to my grandparents in like the most adorably appropriate way she could accidentally out me to my grandparents
Fair
about
enough.
kink. She told them that I was doing rope suspensions
Cool.
because I was taking classes and at the time
Groovy.
told them like, hey, yeah, she's doing rope suspension, or rope bondage, but it's way better because like in the circus they just use silks. Obviously rope is so much safer.
Oh, it's so much safer. Right now, I like the angle.
Everyone thinks that.
Right?
Well, yeah, I mean, they think from falling, you know. So
I will say, I've had a traumatic injury from silks that required major surgery
But not
and having
from
to
rope.
leave the circus. I have also had injuries in rope, but none of them have led to surgery. So she's still kind of right. So I've become her fountain of knowledge when it comes to all things sexual health and kinky and BDSM and polyamorous because she's raising my niece who's 15 and
Yeah.
It's a
things,
new world, new horizons.
conversations like, how do you handle masturbation? It's been a hot minute since her or my grandmother have had to have
Babies.
the sex talk. So we've had a lot of conversations about that, but we've also had a lot of lifestyle conversations. Like she knows all about our polycule. She knows about my
Your
leather
sir.
family.
Yeah.
Shit, Grandma tried to make my leather family, my sir and my alpha, who I call sir and alpha to my family, tried to make them cookies
Kind of sweet.
during a hurricane, like just in case.
sweet.
They could,
I think that's-
exceptionally
yeah.
sweet. Yeah. So while we were talking, she requested that we do like a 101 language course because
Like
she's
absolute novice.
she's
It
like
can get
you,
overwhelming.
the way she said it was, you need to make one for all the old people who have no idea what they're talking about, like me. So
Okay.
that's
And as Kaitlyn said earlier, the baby leathers.
the baby leathers, the baby kinksters, and not baby in age, but just you're new to the lifestyle.
Experience. You can be new at any age
Yes.
bracket.
People
So
enter at all ages.
so we have some terms that we've written out, and we're gonna kind of run through things. I think.
Yep.
Give basic definitions, maybe a little background on any of them, commentary.
Lord knows we cannot keep to the topic. That's all right,
Well-
though. I like it.
Yeah. Look, people tune in as much for our glowing information as they do for our bubbly personalities.
This is another champagne joke, isn't it?
It
It
is.
is.
So funny.
I'm not even mad. Let's get the big one out of the way. BDSM.
All right. So I'm going to take that one.
Do it.
Okay.
BDSM is actually an acronym. Most people think when they hear BDSM, it's just like the term for all that kinky shit the freaks do. Kind of actually is that. It's actually a combination of 3 different combos of words. So it's bondage and discipline, dominant submission, sadomasochism. General term that kind of just covers the bracket.
spectrum.
You can engage in S&M and not have the BD, you can have DS without the S&M, but it's just kind of like an umbrella term.
Yeah.
Yep.
Similar to kink is an umbrella term, but this one actually means things.
Right.
Yes.
Right. All right. So now that we have got that out of the way, let's talk about things we hear a lot about. So I think the big one. What
I was going to say, you had actually used one of the terms that we were going to talk about today earlier when you were sharing the story about your family. You talked about outing to your grandparents. We should probably talk about what outing means.
So being out is kind of short for like being out of the closet, which is something that's pretty commonly understood for if you're LGBT in the queer community, you come out of the closet. Same thing in kink. Some people are out. I am hella out. Like, very much. Some people at my office know from my day job. Pretty much anyone who knows me in my day-to-day life. My face is on the internet.
Yeah.
My other body parts are on the...
a padlock around your throat.
I do.
So it's kind of like a big billboard saying, I'm into some shit.
I'm into some shit, yeah. So being out, and different people have different levels of being out. You can be out to your friends, but not out to your family.
Sure.
Or out to your friends and family, but not out to general public.
Yeah.
Outing is something, it's an action. So it's when somebody else outs you without your permission. So my mom outing me to my grandma. Not that I was hiding anything from my grandma or grandpa. I just wasn't necessarily shoving it in their face.
Right.
My mom telling them, hey, aemok does rope bondage and suspension. Without asking me, can I tell them that you do this thing, is outing me.
Yep.
In my case, it went over quite well. Fairly certain they might have been kinky.
From a lot of the cases, not necessarily.
But not all the cases are like that. I'm super lucky.
Yeah.
Most people, you know, if you out someone, they could lose their job. They could lose their place to live. Not everyone has protections. Not everybody is in a space where they can do that.
Right.
And it's not your choice to out someone. So we try to be careful when we do those things.
Right.
Yeah. I'm similar to you in being out for the most part. If people ask, I tell them. My face is on the internet too, and other body parts. And everything. But my mom actually outed me to herself. Because
When she discovered it, is it?
Sort of. So I had, I guess in a way my sister outed me to my mom inadvertently without knowing herself, because she found some papers in my room that my grandpa's dog had spilt water on, and those papers happened to be copies of my letter of consideration. And
dear.
My sister knew. I always told her, like, if you go in my room for any reason, I was like, you do not read anything. You do not read anything. Like, if you're going in to grab, like, a shirt
let's
or something.
preface that your sister's young.
Yes, my sister is young.
She's under
underage.
18, yeah. So she's
not ready to have that conversation with her yet. She's not ready to have that conversation, more importantly.
Right.
And so my mom always taught her, if you spill water on paper, you just lay them all out and they'll dry. So she was trying to be like a little sister, and she laid them all out on the kitchen counter to dry. And I came home.
On the kitchen counter?
Oh, yeah. No, to the kitchen counter. So I come home, and I was like, Tori, what is all this shit? Because, like, they were coloring pages and stuff. I was like, what is all this? And she goes, oh, well, Aggie spilled water in your room, and so I wanted to dry them, but don't worry, I didn't read any of it. I remember what you told me. I was like, okay. I was like, cool,
but then
thank
your mother.
you. But I didn't, like, look through the papers, because I had picked up all the copies of, like, my rough drafts and stuff. And so my mom came home, and she was, like, shuffling through them, and she ended up, she's like, what is this? And so she ended up reading the whole thing and found out some information she did not want to know about me.
I didn't have to come out to my family. My mother's lifestyle, so I didn't have to come out to my family. Up until recently, kind of just kept it out of my sister's ear, because she was a bit more on the middle side. No, turns out she's into some shit too. So now I can be like, oh, now you have to hear about everything. But till then, I used to say, when we would host rope bondage night here at my home, I would say we're having a tea party.
Oh, I love it.
We all have scene names, which we'll get to in a moment.
Yes.
But for me, my scene name and my legal first name, I don't separate those as much. Like, if you find one, you can generally find the other.
Yeah.
It's not a concern,
Right.
because I teach so publicly, but, like, you use a different name.
Yes. Very different.
So you have,
Yeah, so I've had people find my legal name and everything. I mean, it's a concern to a degree because I am so young that I do keep in mind I do have a future of careers, and there is still that stigma around
the internet is forever.
And the internet is forever. And so while my face is on the internet, like most things populate, whatever, I do hold that degree of separation, mainly because I don't want anything coming back on my family. I do have an underage sister. I do have family that holds religious beliefs that I don't want their personal lives to be affected for my choices. So it's not so much that I don't want people to know who I am and who the real me is, air quotations for you that aren't here.
Right.
It's that I don't want people being able to connect me back to other family members.
Right.
Just for respect of them.
And if you have any doubt, this is very, very much the real us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There is no persona. This is just our insanity.
No.
I think we're nicer here.
So, scene names historically were part of protecting yourself from being outed.
Yes.
They were really common in the gay community, especially in the 40s and 50s, because you couldn't
be gay.
Be gay.
Legally. Yeah. And then you certainly couldn't be doing sodomy and S&M and all of this stuff.
And so, scene names are just different names that we go by. They're a chosen name. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're given to us by partner or family, depending on your community. Other times, it's just one you picked.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it may change.
Yeah.
Depending on,
evolution of self, evolution of scene name.
Right. Like, so I go by Madam Hexe, which is actually a perversion of my motorcycle road name. Believe it or not, which happened at an event I went to. I don't know how that confusion happened, but ended up being Madam Hexe. I rolled with it. I like it. But a lot of people in my local community refer to me as Fräulein because I'm a German. And that was actually my online handle as well, like for online social.
And that's how I was introduced to you.
Exactly. And I respond to both. I use Madam Hexe, I think now mainly for like online, like for my Instagram and for online persona using Madam Hexe, as well as more formal leather, capital L, leather events. But for like play events or things like that, most people know me by Fräulein. So I don't really have a preference. One just seems a little more formal than the other.
And you said in Germany, it's also called a line name?
So the line name is a little bit different in the sense that when you're going through training in like a formal leather context, so when you're like, I want to be part of this scene, this lifestyle, in Europe, a lot of the times you have to start on the S side. Like we discussed in our first episode, you work your way up if that's what you want to do. Some people don't ever want to get to D-type. It's not like an end goal, it's a different path, and that's what they try to explain to you. You don't have to go there if you don't want to. They encourage you, even if you're on the S side, to learn to top in certain skill sets, but it's a lot more strict. And when we get into like top bottom switch discussion, we'll come back to that. But the line name is more of like, if I'm going to train somebody, I wouldn't have them use Madam Hexe or Fräulein because those are my scene names. Those are my names. This is an identity to me, and somebody you're training most likely is not going to stay with you. It's like boarding school. You're with them for the year and some change, and then they go off or they join a community or join a family or something like that, and you kind of pass them off. So you would then adopt a name specifically for training and specifically not just for that one person, but in that training period.
I mean, I use Lady Aemok when I'm doing
pro-dom stuff.
Yeah. If I'm top, like if I've got that kind of relationship with someone, it's Lady Aemok.
Right, exactly.
Everyone else, it's just Aemok or running Aemok.
Aemok. Cue the bouncing.
Give myself a black eye with a boob.
That's
fine.
I'm not wearing a very supportive bra, so that was like,
I'm not wearing any bra, so I'll probably end up with no pants at some point.
That's fair. That's because it's comfier.
Yes.
But let's talk about like top bottom switch.
Yes.
Let's do that since we're kind of running with that theme.
Hey, look, we have
all of these things.
Yes.
Why don't you take this one? Why don't you talk a little about the difference between top bottom and how it differs from dominant submissive?
Yeah, for sure. So top and bottom generally is used a lot in the context of like if you're going to play with someone. And so you can be a top for a scene. So someone might top for wax play. Someone might top for spanking. And then there would be the person receiving it, which would be the bottom. So the top is the person giving out or acting the action, and then the bottom would be the someone receiving it.
Top is giving the action, bottom receiving the action.
Yep.
That is it. No other connotation,
Yes.
no other obligation.
No.
Perfect.
And so dominant submissive takes that one step further, I consider, and it's going to have that almost power exchange context to it. So you're going to have the dominant who is going to be taking more control, and the submissive who's going to be giving that control up, not just always for the scene. And so it kind of takes the top bottom. A dom is still topping, or a dom can even bottom for some things. And so it's not definitive of if you're a dom, you're automatically a top. I know doms that bottom for a lot of things, especially wax play, super therapeutic, or impact.
It's hot stone massage.
Right.
An interesting thing that I've run into when I've taught classes is that I use top and bottom to describe the person doing the thing, the person receiving the thing.
Right.
But if I'm teaching in a gay male space,
Different.
Yes.
it's
different,
different
different.
connotation.
Different context.
To me, I'm like, yes, but the top is still giving and the bottom is still receiving. But
Right.
they don't use it the same way. For them, they use dominant as, or dom as the person doing the thing, and sub as the person receiving the thing, regardless of whether there is a power exchange or not. So
Interesting.
part of it, it's that the difference between I came up predominantly in the het pan side of things,
Right.
versus the gay kink side of things, and that like translation difference between the two. So
Now, it's important to know your audience.
Yes.
And it's important to recognize that sometimes there is differences like that. And sometimes that's why you have to just explain yourself further. You know,
I
that's
generally
why
give a disclaimer if I'm in those spaces and say,
this is the term I'm using.
normally, this is the term I'm used to. I will try to use dom sub, but because of the space. However, if I say top bottom, please
You
understand.
know what I mean. Being a dominant and using it, the term that we described as the power exchange context, you can top or bottom.
Yes.
Not so much in Europe. And I think very indicative of American old guard as well, right?
Yes. So I know in
The
our
expression
family,
is switch in another town.
Yes.
yes. There are a lot of places where switching between the two, not allowed.
Not acceptable.
And I actually do know quite a few people in the Central Florida area who have either had to come up here from down south or come up here or come down here from up north in the state because in their home community, or even other states, I know someone from a totally different state, because in their home communities it was not allowed. I know in training in our family, when we were having a night, I think we were doing fire cupping, the S types were not allowed to be in the space while the D types were being cupped. Not because it was bad or I shouldn't know, like I was literally just coloring in the bedroom with the other S types. However, when they were learning and they were practicing on each other, they were in the room.
Right.
When they were going to practice on us, we were allowed to come back out.
Right.
So
I think in part of that is if you have a power exchange and your S type sees you as a D type bottoming for something, it can, I don't think it should, but it can change the perception of the relationship.
Well, not only that, but even roles reversed. Like, you both fuck my sir. So you know.
we do.
In a vanilla context, though.
Yeah.
I don't
Yes.
So here's the thing, though. But he bottoms for different things for
Right.
both of you. That he. Hear the laughter.
Why, yes, he
But
does.
there are things that he definitely does feel hung up inside about sometimes, and he was very, very nervous to like let people know that he wanted to bottom for those certain things because
Right.
he, in his mind, he's like, but I'm your dom, so people have to see me as your dom, and if they know I'm bottoming for things, they're no longer going to see me as a D type. They're just going to label me as a switch.
Which is the fear. And at the same time, switch is not a dirty word. Can we get that off the table? Switch
Right.
is not a dirty word.
But
to be
it's
honest,
stigmatized to so
to
many
be
people.
honest, as far as I use switch in the top bottom sense. If using in the top bottom sense, I am a switch. I like to bottom for rope. I like to bottom for myself. Does that count? Like
Yes.
Yep.
inflict things on myself.
Sadomasochism.
Right, you know what I mean? I don't use it in the sense of power exchange, but in the sense of action. Yeah, I would consider myself a switch. But I think people, especially in the D types, and I'm going to speak as a D type, often becomes a dick swinging competition. And I hate it. This is not a competition on who's like the dummy dum.
I promise my dick is bigger than any of the ones, and it fucking glows in the dark.
Right, because I bought mine.
And you can just shove it inside me and then walk away and do something.
Right? Oh, I don't have to be attached to it. But the point is, there is a hang up, and I know it's got it. Part of it is to do with tradition, but I think in your sir's example is he's a dude.
Yeah.
I hate to say it that way, but he's a big bloke. He's what, 6 some, what is he? He's giant.
6'5".
Yeah,
6'5", he's giant, like he's a man's man is what, the expression. So for him to want to bottom in anything, but especially something that would be seen as, feminizing or not manly.
Yeah.
I can see where that would be an insecurity, an unnecessary insecurity, but insecurity nonetheless.
And I'm the same as you. I identify as switchy in my play.
Right.
Like I talked about on the first episode, like most people know me as a top. I enjoy that. I do like being dominant in certain settings with certain clients. I really enjoy it. However, in my personal relationships, I tend to very much prefer to go the other direction.
You mentioned sadomasochism, though. Should we talk about what the hell that is?
Yeah.
Those two terms separated and then together?
Yeah. So I can do the separated if you want to do them together.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So sadism is receiving pleasure from inflicting pain on another person consensually. Not to be confused.
Pain or fear.
Pain or fear, yes. So
fear
mental sadism. Mental sadism.
Oh, fuck. When I see that look in his eyes when I come at him with something, I don't even have to hit him. I've already got a tingle inside.
And then masochism is the counterpart to sadism. So it's receiving pleasure or gratification for receiving pain or mental pain.
Right. Pain, agony, distress.
Yes. All the very hot and bothered things.
And together. What does it mean together?
Sadomasochism
as
well. So it's someone who both likes to give and receive pain. It can be, I'm not a sadomasochist, and so I know both of you are. My understanding of it is it's someone who likes to give and receive, sometimes to themselves.
Right, that's another thing. The other definition of a sadomasochist as an individual is someone who only likes pain if it's inflicted on themselves.
Okay.
I think it's used generally if you do both.
Yeah.
Like, I only like pain if I do it to myself. I'm that kind of person. I was like, I wonder if this will hurt. And you're poking your own bruises and that kind of thing. Or I like to do torture rope on myself.
Oh, I love torture bondage.
And it's also, sadomasochism is also an umbrella term for any kind of play that involves like pain, distress,
fear,
pushing a limit in some sort.
So how do you know when you're going out to a bar or a club or an event? How do you know what people are into without striking up a conversation? Is there some kind of hint or clue that we could rely on at certain events?
Almost like a signal of some sort.
Almost like a flag.
Oh, flagging! Yay! We're just that in tune. So flagging is... I really like it. I just recently started using it. I didn't learn about...
Tell us what it is.
Okay, so it is basically using... a lot of people call it the hanky code. So people use handkerchiefs or bandanas for representing what they're into. And so there's a hanky code list that goes through the colors and what they mean, and so people will wear different colored hankies as a conversation starter of this is some shit I'm into.
We'll caveat that, but there are several versions of this list.
Yes.
East Coast of the US, West Coast,
so
lesbian,
generalized by
international,
by regions, and then there's also a difference in flagging what you're into versus flagging what you want to receive. And so
top and bottom.
Yeah, so top and bottom. So tops will generally flag on the left, and bottoms will generally flag on the right. Some switches I've seen just tuck it in the middle to signify that they're open to topping or bottom, or they'll wear two separate ones in each pocket.
Do you know where the hanky code came from?
Gay leather culture?
Ding, 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 ding. Just so we're clear, that will be the answer to a lot of these questions.
Yes. So, again, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, being gay, already problematic, especially in that 50s, 60s range. Being gay and kinky, you were a subsect of a subsect. Right. And you're ostracized. So you couldn't walk into a bar necessarily and just walk up to somebody and be like, hey, what
I
you
want to
in?
suck your cock. Like,
Right.
Do you want to choke me out later?
So they started to develop different ways that they could literally flag.
Mm-hmm.
Hankies were popular. People carried them around anyway.
it was normal.
So different colors started symbolizing different things. If it was red, or if it was blue, or if it was gray,
Or my favorite, black.
or black, which is hard S&M, was a way to signal to other guys in the bar what you were into. So when you walked up, you weren't wasting your time cruising somebody who, you know, as an S-type, you didn't walk up to another S-type or submissive and start to cruise them because...
And then realize that nothing's happening.
So it was a way to kind of identify that.
That and also it's something that I would at least consider a part of flagging is people using their keys was something that I learned about a year ago at my first like big like leather conversation thing. And so a super simple way in a super not obvious way is they would hook their keys either to the left belt loop or the right belt loop, top or bottom. And if they were out, it meant they were open for someone to approach them. They were looking to play. They were looking to fuck. And if they were tucked into that front pocket, it meant that they're still a top, but they're taken or they're not looking tonight.
And it was I've got keys, I'll take you back to my place.
Okay.
Hosting. I could host.
You could
Okay.
host. If it was out and visible, you could host.
Okay.
And you had transportation.
So
Oh.
that's for the gents. Let's talk a little bit about the leather dykes.
Yes.
Yes.
Because let us not forget our ladies in leather. So you know that trend where you paint the ring finger a different color from the other nails? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is leather dyke culture.
Oh.
They would paint that nail a different color. That was your flag color.
And it was which mine is
left hand-
currently gray
Mine-
on both
Perfect.
sides.
Mine are always super sharp and black, but that's fine. So always left finger or right finger, same concept, but it was more discreet. And as a woman, we tend to talk with our hands anyway. You're probably going to see my gesture, and then you're going to know what I'm into immediately. Now it's a trend, so now you can't look at a girl and be like, is she into chicks? Well, I don't know, because now it's trendy. But it used
Check to see the length of the first
Yes.
two.
Not always true, because
Not always true.
I
Because
have-
it's sharp and pointy.
right, but you know, that's what vinyl gloves are for. Or latex gloves.
Because even for, you know, a lot of times when we talk about gay culture, we talk about male gay
Yes.
culture. Very similar rules applied, if not the exact same rules applied to being lesbian.
Yeah, it was adopted.
being-
It was adopted around the same time because there was not a space for queer women to go. You know, we know that the leather bars and the gay male bars started from like the biker clubs and things like that. They kind of came to birth at the same time. There was really no place for women to get their S&M on. And so out of necessity, they just adopted the cultures that existed and they modeled themselves. It changed a little bit, obviously, because some things were no longer applicable, given certain body parts.
And we'll do a whole episode on history.
yeah.
Yes, and I will be a very eager student, and I will actually do my homework and write questions.
Great.
Because it's definitely stuff that I'm still a baby to in the sense of it's super new to me. So, service with a capital S is not service like you're going and getting your car service, like at like the well, you could maybe, but
I was wagging my eyebrows. That's a bit like
it's almost in like having a heart of service, which is a very big deal in the leather community. And so it's providing that service, whether you're a bottom or a top, an S-type or a D-type, it's giving back to your community and the greater community. And so a lot of like the leather organizations fundraise not only for the kink community, but for organizations outside of the kink community.
Yes, we donate to children's hospitals. Get
lots
over
of
it.
that. So like for me right now, my service with a capital S looks like serving my community events. And so I do education, volunteering at events to help them run better and run smoother for the people who want to come and just learn.
It's a giving of yourself.
It's a giving of myself, and it's a giving of myself outside of a power exchange dynamic. Right. My service isn't limited to just my sir. It spans far beyond that.
Right. So it's things like your time. It's things like your energy. It's things like your knowledge. Yes, you could donate, so we could say your resources, but it could be people you know that could help out, that you or your resources as well. So in trying not to use the word service to define service.
Yes.
It is a giving of oneself for a greater good, basically.
Yes.
It's volunteerism at its heart. You know what I mean? And it's...
I think it's generally also the giving without expecting
There's no
to get something
return.
back.
Right, exactly.
You're not, oh, I'm going to do this because they will pay. Well, sometimes it's a pay, but like the expectation of getting something in return.
Right.
It's what you're able to do.
Right. Or not doing it to be seen doing it.
No.
Right. Yeah. So, what about power exchange?
Well, since we're talking about
Yeah,
this.
since we're talking about it.
Power exchange, I'll go for it.
Okay, I was like, wait, me?
Sorry, boobs in my face that aren't my own.
Sorry.
I was
Distracted.
There's just so many pretty things in my face, y'all. This is why I actually like the corner spot.
Yeah,
So-
you can see both of us.
It's great.
See all that was given to us by nature.
So power exchange is a
This will be the Patreon video.
Yes.
really.
Yeah.
So power exchange is the dynamic between individuals where one person or persons has more energy over the others. If we think of in like non-kinky sexy time world, if we think bosses and employees,
Right.
teachers and students, parents and children, those are all power exchanges that generally we haven't negotiated.
Right.
Or when you signed your contract for your job, that's your negotiation.
That's your negotiation.
Yeah.
You don't have a lot of feedback in that as
No.
much.
No,
Not as
here are
much.
the rules. Oh, well, okay then.
Okay.
Yeah.
I accept. Send me life away.
But those are all power exchanges.
Right.
There is one person who has power and one person who has less power or a different power.
Right.
It's on a sliding scale.
Right.
You have very low power exchanges, or you can have a total power
I say
exchange.
intensity. So like
Yeah.
lower
Yeah.
intensity, I would say was more casual. Casual makes it sound dismissive. I don't ever want to call someone's relationship casual. So I say lower intensity versus a higher intensity. So an MS slave dynamic might be more intense.
A child probably can't tell their parent to fuck themselves
Not well anyway, no.
without getting disciplined.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
There's a discipline there. If you tell your boss to fuck themselves
probably
at
get
work,
You might get fired.
you might get fired. There's a consequence there. So there's expressly determined roles for each of the sets of individuals involved.
Right.
When we come into the kinky lifestyle, definition still holds true. Sometimes it's more than two people involved, but for sake of simplicity,
Let's choose two.
we'll just use two. Because in my case, there's 3.5.
Yeah.
4.
Well, he's in training, so he's
He's a baby. He's in
consideration,
consideration.
yes.
He's in consideration, so we still have. But so there can be, and there are more than one person in each role. But for simplicity of explanation,
Let's use D and the S.
we'll have one D and one S. One person is dominant. They're going to, quote, have the control of the relationship.
Be the boss, quote, quote.
Yeah, they're the boss. They're generally going to be the primary decision maker, the directive leader when it comes to how things are going to go on a day basis, depending on contracts and negotiations. The S type is the one that, again, quote, is giving up the power. Everyone's DS looks different. This is not a one-size-fits-all thing.
Right.
And lots of different things fall into
The DS umbrella.
power exchange,
Power exchange
DS
umbrella, yeah.
umbrella. So power exchange is this overarching term that talks about any relationship where there is a
Unequal.
conscious, consenting disbalance in the relationships. It's not abuse. Everyone is doing it of their free will. If they're not doing it of their free will, that is abuse. That's a whole nother conversation we'll have later. But it's a consenting situation.
Right.
Things like 1950s household, where you're reenacting that like ideal 1950s, what's on the postcard, heteronormative ideal. That, if you choose to have it within your relationship, is a form of DS, of power exchange. Master slave, like Madame Hexe and her boy. That is also a power exchange. They have a dynamic. We talk a lot about baby girl boys, whether it's your boy or our boy, our shared boyfriend, any of the rest of our polycule. I know
What a
this.
fun word.
I also use polyconstellation.
Poly constellation. It's becoming a
Because we're
fucking
pretty to look
constellation.
at.
I have a fucking diagram, y'all. I will share it with you because I believe it is accurate for all of us.
yeah.
Because I included all of your humans. Polycule, polyconstellation are kind of just bastardizations
cute words, yeah.
of cute words. For polyamory, polyamory is a form of ethical non-monogamy. What
Oh
is
my
that?
God, does that mean you just fuck everyone and cheat on your partners?
That would be unethical. So the really important part of that is ethical non-monogamy.
So what does it mean to be ethical?
So non-monogamy is having non-monogamous relationships. Monogamy being one partner. Traditionally, the actual term is one partner for life. What most people...
I'm sorry.
Madam Hexe's face was like... If that was a face, if that noise was a face, that was her face. She's like having none of that. So most people actually practice what's called serial monogamy.
Right, yeah.
And I say most, it's just what is generally accepted. It's not even most people. So what's generally acceptable is serial monogamy. You're having one relationship at a time, and then you have a series of them, a serial of them throughout the course of your life. What a lot of people think of when they think of what is, quote, appropriate, romantic relationships. Those relationships are also generally romance, heterosexual, and sexual in nature.
Baby making.
It's, the idea is you have a partner, you're going to get with a partner, you're going to date that partner it's a heteronormative relationship, you're going to climb the escalator, you're going to get married, get a house, pop out children.
2 kids, white picket fence.
Get divorced, start again.
Yep.
That's serial monogamy, not actual monogamy. So you have this idea of you have one partner or one partner at a time. Not everyone works that way. And it's also not historically the norm. There are lots of communities and cultures, both now and in history, that practiced non-monogamy, which is developing relationships that may or may not include sex with more than one person overlapping. The important portion of this is the ethical version. Ethically doing this is when everybody has knowledge and a say. Everyone is consenting. We talk about that a lot in our kink talk, consent versus abuse. Same applies to your monogamous versus non-monogamous relationships. Consenting to have, whether it be an open, swinging, monogamish, or poly relationship, it's the consent. The people are agreeing to whatever flavor they like. Sometimes those flavors shift. I know people who start swinging and poly and then just back and they were closed and then they're monogamous and they're open. So it's
you're allowed to evolve. It's fine.
You're allowed to evolve. The nice thing about it is that it also takes the emphasis in a lot of cases off of the romantic and the sexual bit of the relationship.
Yes.
It allows for
a little asexual over here.
A little asexual.
Got her pom-poms out.
Also the mono of the group. Well, mono-ish. If we're going by your alpha's definition, then...
What is your alpha's definition of mono-ish?
Because I'm technically in a romantic relationship.
So she would be asexual,
right?
But polyromantic.
I would believe
so
that.
So she is asexually monogamous, but polyromantic, meaning she can, and that's again that separation of
sexual and romance
doesn't equal relationship. Relationship doesn't equal sex.
Right.
Sex doesn't equal love.
Right.
Love doesn't equal romance.
Exactly.
Yes.
So our relationship is a generally asexual relationship, but we have so it's platonic on that part because with the kitty, we're generally not fucking her.
Generally.
There
are times.
Asexual can be a little gray sometimes.
Yes.
Right. So, we don't have the sexual situation. However, we do have a very committed, emotional relationship with each other. While we joke about the metas is a thing, but we also all say we're girlfriends. It's a thing.
And it's definitely something that evolved. When we first started out, we were very much so just metas, but then we started hanging out more. But then we go back to when my sir first got a date with you, me pouting and saying, "No fair, I was supposed to have the date first."
That's cute.
So for me, a lot of my hang up is I had a really bad experience with poly. I tried it once before I realized I was asexual. Basically, it was practiced non-ethically because it was just him and I, and then about 3 or 4 weeks in, he was like, "Oh, by the way, here's this other girlfriend I just took on." I was like, "Wait, what?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then I got, we were in a DS, and so I I stayed up late the night before a test because I wanted to talk to him because we were on different time schedules. We were 3 hours apart.
Okay.
It was no rule, or there wasn't a rule or anything that I had to tell him like what my school schedule was or anything. And so I wake up the next morning. I was like, man, I'm really tired. I have to go to this test. He goes, oh, you stayed up late on a test night? I was like, well, yeah. I was like, it was the only night you were available this week. I wanted to talk to you. And so he took that as being able to punish me by making me watch him Skype the other girl, but not acknowledging me. But told her that I was just into a cuckold situation, cuck queen
that
situation.
Feels a lot like non-ethical.
Oh no, it was very
that is really non-ethical.
It's very non-ethical,
like
very abusive. And so, but that was my only view on poly. And so I was very much so against poly.
I can see that. Yeah, that's pretty shy.
And so, and for that, like, I always consider myself very, very mono, but I also did not have that separation of sexuality and romantic relationship side.
Okay.
And so,
which is ingrained to us as we grow up in society, that if you love somebody, if you're romantic with somebody, you have to have sex with them. You have to have a sexual relationship.
Yeah. And that's the only person you're going to have a relationship with.
And that's why I was 22 before I found out that I was asexual, even though, like, looking back, I could be like, oh.
Which, by the way, I think was not too late, because I feel like, imagine if you'd been like 42 and then figured
there are
like if you'd spent your
talking with my grandmother about it, because it came up. She's like, there's a word for that. I was like,
God,
what do you mean?
Oh, maybe
and she goes,
oh my God,
like, I've never really like wanted that. Like, I knew it was a thing, and I knew that like my mom wanted me to have kids. Like, I kind of wanted to have kids, but I didn't really want to like procreate
the children.
And so like there's a lot of people who just they've been it for so long, but there was never a word for it, a term
probably
for
just
it.
Felt
they were just
wrong
broken.
With them. Yeah.
Or they just weren't trying hard enough, or they just hadn't met the right person. All of the things we still hear people tell us today. There wasn't as much interaction with being able to find people who also felt that way.
Right.
And to kind of have that community within itself. And so it was kind of hard for me when we all started being our little girlfriend gang, because I still was very set in that mindset of, I can't be dating them though, because like we don't have a sexual relationship, even though I know I'm asexual and don't even really have sex with my sir.
Right.
Like in my brain I was like, well no, I'm still mono, they're just my metas. It was something that like took time to like get into, and then I think it was aemok actually who called me her girlfriend first. I was like, what? Oh yeah, no, I guess. And
actually,
it was your alpha.
It was my alpha who did it, because I was being excessively like considerate of the fact that like, nope, she identifies as mono. This is not the type of relationship she wants at this time.
Right, yeah.
Even though we're doing all the things that for me would check those boxes.
Right.
I was not going to be the first one to call her the girlfriend. So as soon as she did, like 2 months later, I was like, yeah!
Well, so it was funny though, because it was actually, we had planned a day. My sir was off doing something. I don't think it was a date with you. I think he was seeing his grandparents or something. It was a night of leather social. And I was like, I'm thinking about going, but there, like, I have a very small friend group there that I generally like magnetize to. Mm-hmm. And you weren't going to be there. I think you were out of town. Cool. And so aemok and her family invited me out.
That is nice.
And so beforehand, she's like, well, do you want to grab dinner or something? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so we went to IHOP. And so we went to IHOP and we shared a meal. And then we went to the bar and we bought it. Like, I think I bought her drinks because she bought dinner.
Right.
And then, so her alpha comes up to me. He said something to her because I think he was trying to, like, get her to say something and she didn't want to.
Right.
And so he goes, well, I'm not going to say it. I was like, wait, and now I want to know. Like, you guys are obviously talking about me.
Yeah.
And so her alpha goes, I just need you two to accept that you're dating already and, like, leave it at that, and then walks away.
That sounds like something he would say.
But it definitely did kind of get me to start really thinking about, no, I can actually kind of, well, not kind of, sort of, like, I can actually date other people, and I can have this poly aspect to my relationships without it being sexual. And for me, sexuality is separated from play, because I will sure as fuck let both of you beat the shit out of me.
Hell yeah.
And so
she filled out my list, so I just need to make time. Now I just gotta make time and set that shit up.
But yeah, so was sort of off topic, but not really, because
totally
we're talking about terms and whatnot.
Alright guys, this is your special guest closer, Shade Tree Surgeon, and that brings us to the end of this episode of Trouble Comes in Threes. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel, leave a like on the video and a comment down below. Until the girls return, make sure you keep it weird.